Yes.
Nice.
So as Toast is enjoying visions of Guy's Cradle dancing before his eyes, we do have some magic to get to here. We have Dalton Ozmon on the mono red Obosh deck that has a pretty dedicated following online, and we're seeing another result from it in paper here. And Dalton was one of our top 4 seeds in the top 12, so he got to rest on his laurels for a little bit, had a bye for the first round of the top 12. And getting that nice reward for doing so well in the Swiss. And now he is facing off for his first round in the elimination bracket against Nathan Barkley, who we just saw dismantle the Merfolk deck with 4-color elementals.
Really interesting thing is I believe Dalton and Alan Swan took an intentional draw and they both made top 4. Like, so they had the bye as well.
Well, that always feels good to be able to ID into a better position in the standings there. And oh god, the foil decks are everywhere here, Jarvis. This it doesn't seem like it's fully foiled elementals, but it's not that far off.
All right, I see a Ren 6, a Heath, Omnath, Risen Reef, Fury, Teferi, Prismatic Ending. So I guess this is on the draw. He's deciding whether to keep.
Mm-hmm. And this mono red deck is worth discussing quickly. So this has the same mono red core that we see in the Scam deck and a few other decks of Ragavan as a 1-drop, and then Fable of the Mirror Breaker, Season Pyromancer at 3, and then Fury at 5. And then it turns out that most other decks, whether it's Scam or Gruul, or we see some Boros decks popping up online, they each fill out the deck in their own way. This is saying, I just want to be mono red. And specifically, I want to be mono red with all odd mana costs, so I get one of the few remaining companions here in Obosh, the Prey Pisser.
Love an Obosh. Generally, when you see Obosh cast in this deck, it deals like 16 damage on average, I would say.
Yeah, and thanks to cards like Bonecrusher Giant, you have way to use all of your mana with the stop mode, even though technically the card costs 3 and therefore is Obosh eligible.
I like the fact that there's 4 sideboard the Stonebrain because that's a statement to the fact that Obosh does not matter in the very linear matchups.
Yeah, and that's almost broadcasting your intentions, right? Like if you're playing some combo deck and your opponent doesn't reveal Obosh anymore, you kind of know what's about to hit you. So I think one big factor that's going to come up in all 3 of these games, but especially when Dalton is on the play, as he is as a higher seed, is going to be the 4 main deck Blood Moons. The 4-color deck, some of them have cards like Abundant Growth explicitly to kind of hedge against Blood Moon. You have your basics you can fetch, and then maybe kind of like Leyline Binding can get you out of that situation. But try as you might, your 4-color deck with all of these mana requirements still going to have a hard time against a Resolve Blood Moon in most games.
I believe this exact version, there are 0 abundant growths and 0 leyline bindings. It's just the core 4 colors, no touching for Zagoth's Triumph for leyline binding, and there are 0 leyline bindings.
There is a more elaborate way to get out from under Blood Moon here in Oath of Nissa. We have 4 copies of that in the main deck, taking up that Abundant Growth slot, and so that will let you cast one of your 4 Teferi Time Ravelers, even if all your lands for the time being are mountains. And when we say elementals here, we don't just mean, oh, well, there are some elementals and maybe you free roll that hero. This is a Risen Reef deck with a copy of Titania, in fact, who Eladami's call for. So really leaning hard on the Risen Reef synergies here, not going quite so far as Ephemerate, at least in the main deck, as you flagged up, do have 2 of those in the sideboard. But this is a more kind of sorcery speed, proactive version of 4-color, as opposed to some of the more reactive versions that we've seen come up recently as well.
So I think Dalton has another Ragman. Deciding whether to play it in a Ren 6 or not was the decision there.
Yeah, that's the kind of classic dilemma, right? Where you're crossing your fingers, you're hoping for the best, but you also don't want to be committing to dashing it each turn, spending all your mana that way. So Dalton decides, yeah, I'll just make him have another good follow up here. We do have Strand or Boseiju into Ren 6, but that might take the shields down for a potential Blood Moon. So this might be trying to kind of lay the trap and see if Nathan falls into it. Now, that being said, it's a trap if you can avoid it. If it's just a face-up threat staring you in the face that you can't do much about, sometimes you have to just play into that. And hey, if Dalton has a Blood Moon, well, okay, we have 2 more games to play.
Looks like Dalton's last card in hand is Fable of the Mirror Breaker, though.
And that's a nice one to have left in the tank if that's your only thing left.
Actually, it was Fable and one other card that I couldn't really see.
Even better, we might have a dead card to discard to our favor. So everything, not everything coming up Dalton here, but a nice way to kick off this game.
Wait, very interesting that there's seems to be a lot of Ramunat ruins in the list of this Obosh red deck. I don't. Would you say that's pretty normal for this type of deck?
Yeah, you expect to see a few of those, and you usually have, let's say, 22, 23 lands, somewhere in that range, and you have space for a lot of utility lands because you are a mono-red deck, and so you see 2 Sokensan in the deck, 3 Den of the Bugbear, those Ramunap Ruins, 4 Spyfield Hazard, which kind of counts, and of course, the 1 Shrink of the Bloodsoak Keep to, to let Ragavan rumble in combat a little easier. So
There's
Nathan's
the respect
touching
for Blood Moon.
basic planes to go along with, I want to say that's Expedition Temple Garden and Expedition Steam Vents.
Yeah.
Still got it. You'd love to see it.
What do you have? Do you have Expedition Steam Fence in your collection?
Absolutely not. I'm a guild pack Steam Vents man through and through, but good to be on top of these things. And Prismatic Ending taking down the Goblin token from Fable, so answering some fraction of Fable. I'll defer to a mathematician, of course, if you know any, to weigh on exactly what that fraction is. But this is why the cards like Fable are so good against these grindy decks, where it's kind of hard to keep up with them just on pure card advantage. But cards like Fable, where they feel the need to deal with all of it, but they can't do that all at once. That's how you can maybe flip that script in your favor.
Do you discard both, or do you only discard Relic?
I wonder if he actually has any interest in this relic to kind of try and contain that Renin
Yeah.
6.
Well,
Yeah, so it looks like he's just keeping both of those cards. And it's tough here because there's enough other stuff in Nathan's graveyard that if you want to stop Renin 6 from doing work, you kind of have to pop the relic, and that's just a one-shot thing. So yeah, we're going to see relic activated here,
mhm.
eat all the graveyard, so Renin 6 off the board for now, but we do have Beseiju in Nathan's hand still, so Renin 6 and Beseiju is a nice little combination being threatened for future turns.
Though it looks like Nathan was about to miss a land drop and decided to play the Boseiju out as a land.
Yeah, and that makes sense too. You have these 2 5 drops in your hand that you want to be hard casting. And also, the thing you would most want to Beseiju is Blood Moon, but you don't have a basic forest or a way to find one, so the Beseiju's not getting you out of that either. So yeah, I think playing it makes some sense as well.
So I think Dalton drew a Den of the Bugbear, the dungeon manual version of the card, right?
Yeah, which in my view does not qualify as drip, but others are free to disagree.
And
And
Obosh.
yeah, Obosh just picked up here. Worth noting, Reflection of Kiki Jiki does still technically have an odd mana value, the original value of 3, if it comes down to that.
So Nathan did not draw a fifth land. Otherwise, I think one of the elementals would be hard cast on that turn.
Yeah, Teferi bouncing the Fable back, which on the face of it seems like an odd exchange, but Fable takes enough time to kind of take through its various chapters that by the time we get to it becoming Reflection again, Nathan will have found something else relevant to do.
By drawing Flooded Strand off of the Teferi minus was very, very, very good for Nathan.
Yeah, that was excellent. So 2 basics in the loop now. We get to pair that Flash down with our Renin 6 and guarantee our land drops for future turns. So Nathan kind of has it all going on at this point.
This game does not seem to be going fantastic for Dalton. I think the uncontested red might be a huge problem. I guess maybe Den of the Bugbear can do something about that, except we know about the Solitude, right?
We do. I don't think Dalton does. So he
Yeah,
might think,
right.
that hasn't really been a good spot to use a Solitude yet. He might decide, okay, I kind of have to take the gamble anyway, fire out the den, finish off the Teferi, chip away at the Renaissance. Like maybe that's the best route to actually make inroads on the board here. That being said, if you commit to the den and it gets removed, well, that's your whole turn gone and your fifth land for your. So it's not without its risks, but I don't know if there's another good option or really any good option at all here.
Looks like Stomp onto Fairy,
Yeah.
and
And
then
it's
Fable or Bone Crusher will be cast.
Fable getting
I get-
cast. Yeah. So
yeah.
this kind of makes sense too, because you can still threaten to go after the Ren next turn. And you do partially deal with the Teferi.
Yeah, if Nathan gets to ult the Ren, actually, how threatening is a Ren ult in Nathan's deck? Let me take a quick look.
I think it's not super threatening in general, and also the relic early in the game gobbled up most of that graveyard a while back. So I don't know if there's any appealing targets there at the moment.
So total in Nathan's main deck, there are 2 Lightning Bolt, 2 Eldar Skull, 3 Prismatic Ending, and 1 ending was exiled.
Yeah, and depending on how the rest of the game plays out, Prismatic Ending itself might not be that threatening, even Nathan can cast it effectively infinite times.
So if you're Dalton, do you think there's a face-up Solitude here?
It's not quite face up, but it's it has to be at the forefront of your mind. Pitching Ragavan, okay. And also a redundant land, but I don't know what we're
Yeah,
hoping to find off the Fable.
probably Fury is the best draw.
Sure, and that looks like a Expedition Windswept Heath from Nathan as the fetch there. So if that's the case, he
Mhm.
can find basic forest and then have all of his ducks in a row, even under a top deck Blood Moon.
That's one of the major issues with Blood Moon. If Ren has gone on for too long, it doesn't really do very much versus that.
Yeah, it's not an automatic I win button at any stage of the game. It's often stealing a game before the opponent has a chance to develop, but we are well past that phase at this point.
Dalton trying to go to combat. I think Nathan doesn't even care about the Ren Emblem because he knows his deck is not very well set up to use it.
Yeah, I think he's almost happy if Dalton feels the need to contest the Ren instead of going after his life total, which is a healthy 15 at this point. Doesn't seem in too much danger.
I really do like the patience with the Solitude. I think a lot of people would Solitude the Goblin Token there, but it could just be so much better if you Solitude either the Bone Crusher or the Obosh.
Yeah, you kind of want to get 2 cards worth of value out of that, or at least one good card, as opposed to just solid shooting the first thing that moves.
Yeah, this is going to pay off very well for Nathan. Ooh, you love to see that.
Did
So
that got spiked? So that should be exiled, right?
yeah,
From
it should
Spike
be
Hazard?
exiled.
Yeah.
So basically what happened there was Solitude was put on the stack charting Obosh. Dalton responded with Spikefield Hazard, which deals extra damage to take out the Solitude.
Yeah, so a nice little exchange, but Nathan still has so much left going on that I don't think it's going to be close to enough.
That is an Expedition Stomping Ground.
It sure is, Jarvis. It sure is.
You know, I mean, you can keep channeling your inner Joe Lissette all you want. I'm gonna just try to like keep people informed about what's going on here.
No, look, Jarvis, you played a 4-color deck similar-ish to this one this weekend, and your deck list picture is one of the finest examples of drip I've seen in a long time, my friend. Just beautiful original shock lands and fetch lands arrayed neatly in columns of 6, so people could realize you're playing 60 cards and not 65 or something like that. The picture really Yeah, it was oriented upright instead of sideways. It really was perfection.
Yeah, Tim Wu gives me like a D minus on those deck photos.
Well, Tim has exacting standards.
That is true. But anyways, so we're fetching again, probably so we can pick up the fetch again. Wonder if Nathan drew another good big spell to cast. By the way, this probably I'm not sure if they actually shared the deck list before the match, but when you see Kahira, you know you don't have to worry about Elishnorn, Mother of Machines, which is a common inclusion
Yes.
in these decks nowadays. And I think that's also a big deal versus the Obosh deck because it's a 4/7 and also turns off the Furies, anything else that triggers off of that,
Oh god,
it
here's
kind of just
Risen Reef into Omnath. So
ooh.
a lot of game action's been taken here, and yeah, Elishnorn is one of those cards where these decks now have to seriously consider: is it worth giving up Kahira even for just the one copy of Elishnorn as the only ineligible creature in the deck? Some have said yes, and it's hard to argue with that choice. But Nathan has this alternative 5-drop finisher in Titania, and once you are doing the full elementals thing, I think just Gahira becomes valuable at that point. It's not just the companion you play because you can, the way it is in some control decks, for example.
Yeah, and I mean, always pitching to Solitude or Endurance can matter a lot. This game's sort of getting out of hand for Dalton. Like, when you get to this point in the game, it's just very difficult to beat the card quality coming from the Elementals deck.
Yeah, and Dalton doesn't really have any way to go over the top. It's just trading off cards, playing some decent threats, but there's no big finish that we're playing towards here. So if this kind of gameplay isn't enough, then nothing in the deck is going to be enough.
And I often think by this point, this sort of gameplay is not enough. Like,
Yes.
you, this casting like 4/3s for 3, like, that sure that is a bigger creature, but ultimately what you're going to need to overwhelm the Elementals deck is like a big card, not small ball cards.
Yeah, and Blood Moon earlier on in the game, much earlier, is that big card, right? But other
Mhm.
than that, there's nothing that can fill the void this late.
Nathan has so many cards in hand, I can't really tell what is going to happen this turn because there's just who knows? There could be anything in hand.
Just double checking something about Bone Crusher Giant
So I
over
think
there.
what was being checked is see if a triggered ability triggers Bone Crusher's damage.
Sure. And the answer, luckily, is no. And so
Yeah.
uh, either Fury or Solitude going to do a number on that Bone Crusher Giant here. Looks to be
Two
Fury.
Furies,
First
a
of two.
Kahira Prismatic Ending, and a Ragran Triumph.
Yeah, going to take down the Fable instead. And then, well, actually take down both. Yeah, splitting 2 and 2, and then the 1 damage from Renaissance going to finish that off. It's
Ooh.
Madigan going to kill the last remaining creature. And yeah, this is just a bloodbath.
And I think we can make the mana from the thing, play Kahira, get an attack for 5 Vigilance.
There
And
are lots of very impertinent people in the chat who clearly have never heard a British accent or a South African accent. But here we are.
what?
Don't worry. You don't have to suffer the slings and arrows here the way I do.
You what, mate?
Jarvis, but please never say that again.
I'm
Super
sorry.
bugger.
It was just too easy, Dom. It was just too easy.
Anyway, back to Magic the Gathering here, where we are officially in garbage time, so that's why conversations like this can happen
Yeah.
instead. But Dalton, once again, showing more perseverance here than I would be inclined to in this position.
Also, one thing about this game that actually was kind of funny, if we had the old damage reduction rules, with like Blightning or Remy at Ruin or whatever, we might have been able to like take out a Ren 6 much earlier with the Ruins, but that didn't actually happen.
Yeah, I guess the Remnant ruins have just been like hiding there in plain sight for so long at this point that you just kind of forget about it. But yeah, it's so looking at the deck list here, which we have access to and you do not, but we will you'll be able to look at these after the event has concluded here. Does Dalton really gain too much that changes the term of the matchups at all? It looks like, I guess, Maze of the Moon if you want a fifth version of that effect, but that one notably is more vulnerable to both Solitude and Fury. And
Mhm.
then I guess Pillage if you want to double down on that plan, but Pillage not ideal against the 4 red and 6 deck.
My suspicion is I would side in Pillage and Magus of the Moon and take out Phoenix of Ash, maybe?
Yeah, Phoenix is a little underwhelming. Intrigued to see it in the deck in general. I guess once you're limiting your mana curve, the Bosch requires, you kind of just need something else to make up the numbers, and Phoenix is the fourth or fifth best thing.
So from the elemental side, I think Boseiju definitely comes in. That's a no-brainer. It's more debatable if the ephemerates come in or endurance.
Yeah, endurance doesn't really shut anything off in particular, I guess, except for the one Phoenix. But as a 3/4 blocker, like its stats are decent in combat, I suppose.
I kind of feel like, from my perspective, looking at Nathan's deck, if the game just goes long and he's not dead, he's pretty easily going to overpower the opponent, assuming Blood Moon's dealt with. Ooh, those are beautiful Blood Moons.
Yeah, original the Dark Blood Moons there, really raising Dolph's drip count. On the elemental side, I wonder if Risen Reef actually is a candidate for cutting, just because it's a little slow, especially on the draw. And then the Dalton has 4 Spyfield Hazard, alongside Bonecrusher Giant and Lightning Bolts, and so much of this small removal that really hard to go off with that card. Even though we did kind of see that in game one.
I think there's one more you have to worry about with these decks, which is cutting too many of your engine cards causes your deck to malfunction. Personally, I'm interested in cutting Titania, because I think
Mhm.
in all the games you're losing, Titania doesn't do anything.
Yeah. I mean, Jarvis, you can shoot her down, but she won't fall. She is Titania. But I don't know if that's a compelling argument to keep her in the deck.
What?
Don't worry about it. It's pop culture. I don't want to inflict that upon you.
I was just gonna go to Titania's flavor text, and then I realized Titania has no flavor text because there's so many words on the card.
Yes. I guess so. The main deck relics are an interesting thing here because the floor is not that low because you can always just cycle it away, and it can contain Renaissance, which is the best card in the Elementals deck and perhaps in the entire format here. So with that in mind, I guess if you're looking to upgrade some of your main deck cards, you probably look elsewhere.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Wait, what's with Shattering Spree? Oh, okay. I think I'm unpacking what's coming up, happening here. I believe Dalton has seen the Chalice of the Voids in Nathan's sideboard, so Shattering Spree is coming in to counteract that.
Which is funny because we didn't actually flag up Chalice from Nathan's side as an appealing sideboard card, which maybe we should have, but I don't know if Nathan will bring those in. And even if you expect that he will, I don't know if it's worth bringing in Shattering Speed with no other targets in the deck just to try and contest those.
So it looks like we're cutting a Flame Slash and 2 relics for, what was that? Pillage and 2 Shattering Spree.
Yes.
One thing I'm really not a fan of, especially in open deck lists, if you sideboard like this face up, just swapping 3 in and out, it's pretty
Yes.
easy to deduce what those cards are. Especially in open deck lists, I would just shuffle all 15 in and take 15 out.
And given this Chalice subgame as an example, right? Like if you think that 2 cards that are definite to bring in and none of the others are real candidates, and then you see Dalton bringing in, or you see Nathan bringing in 4 cards. But at that point, you narrow down the options, and there's not that much else it
Yeah.
can really be. And so maybe that moves the needle in terms of do you want the answers to the chalice or something like that. I guess the answer with the pillage is it is an answer to chalice if that's what you're going for, but also
Mhm.
yeah, it's bad against Ren and 6, but Ren and 6 is tough to beat a lot of the time regardless. And in the non Ren and 6 draws, going after that mana base might actually be a plausible strategy.
Your partner in crime, Ari, I watched him play in RCQ yesterday, and he thought seized a 4C player, and the 4C player had 2 Ren in hand. It was very sad for Ari. Scammer got scammed by Ren 6.
You hate to see it.
You actually do. It was like the game dragged on for a while, but Ari eventually lost.
Do you know if we have updates on the other matches we see? I think that's TJ Radishak in the background in that top 8 match. But if we do get any updates there, we will let you know as we do. In the meantime, here, back in our match, is Dalton going to 6 already? Sounds like one of those updates is that in the Murktide Mirror, TJ versus Mark Stanton, TJ is down a game over there.
I believe Dalton's hand was a 1-lander with a bunch of 3-drops, which is sometimes a problem for the Obosh deck, but
Yes. I'm actually kind of surprised this Obosh deck doesn't have a Gemstone Caverns itself, just because on the draw, jumping up
right.
from just do a 3-drop on turn 2 is pretty
Uh-oh.
nice. Down to
Uh-oh.
5.
Really not where you want to be. And, like, I actually think there's a lot of comparisons to be made between Obosh Red and Rakdos Sort of functionally, they do occupy the same space. One difficulty is you can't cheese the win of like, all right, grief you twice on turn 1.
Or Fury twice. I just playing a 4/4 double
Yeah.
strike on turn 1. That is a turn 3 kill against. Yeah, we saw the other day, turn 1 Fury plus Feign Death, turn 2 Dash Ragavan and attack for 10, turn 3 Dash Ragavan, attack for 10 again. That's 20. That's lights out on turn 3. And yeah, this mono red deck doesn't have quite the same quantity or flavor of those free wins.
Well, I can say for sure that Shattering 3 will probably go to, well, I guess I can't say for sure, but I think it's likely Shattering 3 will go to the bottom. Or not.
Yeah, I would assume Spree and maybe the Bolt, honestly. It's tough to say.
I think I wouldn't ship Fury. It is kind of difficult though, for sure. Personally, I think what I would do is just ship Shattering Spree and Relic Progenitus and just hope you don't get chaliced.
Yeah, I would ship the Spree back to my sideboard, but given that we are where we are, I would ship it to the bottom of the deck because you even have Seasoned Pyromancer. If Nathan did
Right.
bring Chalice in and draw one of the 2 copies and does play it on turn 2, you still have Pyromancer to sift away some of those 1-drops.
Yeah, I kind of just like keeping the Bolt and the Fury just in case if you get into a weird game where you get to hardcast Fury, trade equitably. I just think the Relic is not actually that meaningful a lot of the time.
Yeah, I don't think this relic is something that you sit on in the long term. Is if it can hassle a Ren 6, great. Otherwise, you cash it in and go from there.
Would you have cashed it in right there?
I think so. I mean, especially on 5 cards, I think you need a high impact 3-drop, which Fable is. So if Fable was rolled up, then yeah, maybe you keep the relic for an additional turn.
So I think one of the counterpoints is suppose you use all of your cards and then you want to play Spyro with an empty hand, then Relic is a relevant card post Spyro, right?
Yes, it is. That's fair. Maybe there's an argument too for just cashing in the relic, hoping to find a turn 3 Blood Moon. And hoping that can get you out of this hole that you're in already.
Right. Nathan being very mindful of Blood Moon right here.
Yeah, I think Nathan knows as well that this is one way he loses a game, which seems very, very winnable at this stage. And yeah, Relic doesn't actually prevent
Yeah.
Ren from buying back a land in this spot. So that lightning bolt taking down some portion of the Fable and then insulating the fetch land, effectively drawing a card, right? If you want to
Mhm.
think about it that way.
Yeah, this is why I would have liked to see keeping the Fury instead of the Relic, but and look at Nathan's hand. It's just it's like 5 real spells. This Shattering Spree is not the best Shattering Spree. But it is a piece of cardboard you can discard to your Fable with a Mirror Breaker.
It is a spell that is in the deck. That much I can say.
Okay, Dash Dragavan, that was a meaningful draw.
Okay, and Bolt now finishes off Ren. Okay. So that's something, and we do have the Season Pyromancer still in reserve there.
One of these days we'll get that fetch land with Relic of Janus.
But
Or
today
not.
is not that day.
It is just so hard to relic what you actually want to relic, is the best way of putting it.
So Hallowed Fountain and
Sacred Foundry.
Sacred Foundry. Okay, untapped Sacred Foundry. So this is it Omnath time?
I believe I saw an Omnath. I saw an Omnath, the Teferi, and there was one other card I couldn't quite see. 2 Omnaths, Prismatic Ending, Teferi, Boseiju, Risen Reef was drawn.
Just
So,
doing the quick count to make sure we do in fact have 4 different colors of mana accessible.
why did we relic with the Fable on the stack?
These are good questions.
Do you just cast Spyro and hope to draw Mountain Flameslash?
Or, Fury, red card.
Yeah, I think that's what I would do as well. I think these cards are just not meaningful. You also get 2 elementals. That looks like. Well, there's a mountain. Was that a blast? No, Spike Field Hazard. Okay, I think things are going to go downhill very quickly.
Yeah,
Guess
whenever
we're
you get to
kind of
untapped with
already
Omnath,
downhill.
yeah, we are hurtling down the hill, and now it's getting on like an even steeper incline.
So if we have a fetch, we would have access to 9 mana, but I don't think I saw a fetch in the hand unless it was just drawn. But we could hit one here.
Yeah, here's Risen Reef, and Reef is another way to get to that second. I was going to say chapter, the second landfall trigger from Omnath, to get the additional boost without needing an actual fetch land in the mix. So Risen Reef going to bite the dust. That should be XR2. There we go. That card is getting drawn, whatever it is. Or maybe it's
It
a
might be
land
a
which
land and deciding whether or not to play it tapped or untapped, right? It was in
yeah,
fact a
that's
land.
okay. So and a fetch land, no less, right? Or is that's the scene vents?
No, that is a
Okay,
land
that is.
receipt.
God, dear God.
Okay, so the reason I think that was a decision for Nathan was you could have put into play tapped, but then you would have to play Boseiju out as a land to get the mana from Omnath. and he just wants to preserve the Boseiju in hand to play around Blood Moon.
Every time I have to figure out which expedition is which, I have that much more sympathy for anyone who works for a Magic retailer who has to, differentiate between 10 different printings of every
Mhm.
new card with every new set.
Right. So green was used. We still had mana floating. Then we ending relic. Shouldn't we wait?
Yeah, now now
Yeah,
Dalton
this was
gets
out of
to
order.
yeah.
Yep.
Don't think it's going to matter too much, but
Well, the
a little
ending
careless.
should not be exiled, but
No. It also means that the Boseiju is now exiled, right? So if there's a
yes.
red and 6, I can't buy it back. So if the game is closer, that could be a difference maker, but I think Nathan is still in a fine
Yeah,
spot.
I think it's still kind of a runaway for Nathan, just given Nathan also has a second Omnath in hand, so it seems extremely difficult to get out of this. And the fact that Nathan already has two basic lands out, forest and plains, I think it just makes it very, very difficult to get out of this. Fury is one of the better draws, though.
Yeah, Fury will take down Omnath. We'll crunch him for 3. I assume finish off the Teferi and then 2 up at Nathan.
Do you respect Solitude, or you just try to take your free damage? I would probably just try to take the free damage,
I don't think
personally.
you can, because if you respect Solitude now, you're just trying to respect it every turn for the remainder of the game until it's played. Like, I think you just if the Teferi lives as well, not the end of the world, honestly. So there is the backup Omnath.
Oh, well, that fetch is easier for you.
That's the Windswept Heath.
Are you sure? It could be a
Not
Temple
a,
Garden.
not a drippy one, but it sure is a Windswept Heath. It is funny watching coverage from the mid to late 2000s when there was only one printing of so many of these iconic cards, and so there's this kind of a beautiful uniformity among all of the different decks that play them.
That is a Temple Garden, though.
Yeah, okay. All I'm saying is, if I was looking for a temple garden at my local, realtor's office, and showed me that, I would.
Oh shoot! It was a breeding bull. I was
You
wrong.
lied, you liar.
Is it actually a lie if I'm just mistaken?
I mean, I am a philosophy scientist, but even I am not equipped to answer that one.
So we're cycling and then probably picking up the Triome with Ren 6. Oh, maybe Windswept Heath? Do we have enough spells? Wow, we must have a lot of spells in hand. We're picking up Windswept Heath. Second Fury? Whoa.
Okay. Are we? Oh no.
There's a ephemerate from the sideboard!
From the top rope, ephemerate.
So
Protecting
I was
Omnath
actually
once
thinking
again.
about that because I think if you ephemerate a big creature, it's not that easy for Dalton to kill it.
Also, a lot of the removal that Dalton has is sorcery speed, so Fury,
Right.
Flame Slash, and so on. So, yeah, sometimes you can actually save it nicely.
Yeah, so I really think Nathan didn't side in Chalice of the Void based on how the game played out and the fact that Ephemerate's in his deck.
Okay, so in
Ooh,
response to the Solitude rebound trigger, it looks like we're casting. In response to the Ephemerate rebound trigger, we're casting Solitude,
yep.
and then Ephemerate will rebound, declare a target, and can see the Solitude that's now there. And so we will get to eat both of those Furies now.
That's pretty brutal for Dalton. So how about Plague Wind for a single white? Almost Plague Wind.
Jarvis, if my opponent has one creature and I source a Plowshares it, is that a Plague Wind?
You're the philosophy scientist.
I think this is really more in the math realm, if you ask me. But
I mean, I don't know. Like, if a tree falls on Omnath, the Locust of Creation, what happens?
if the Sage just collapses on top of Omnath, but no one is around to resolve it.
All right, chat. What land is that? Is that Temple Garden?
It almost looks like a black land, right? Like, if you ask me in the dark, I would say that's Godless Shrine or something.
It's Temple Garden. It does look sort of
Yay!
like Godless Shrine, though.
Woo!
So Dalton has Ragavan and is that Blast Zone?
The Blast Zones are one of the really interesting features of the mono red Obosh decks because you're kind of behind, I think, starting out against a deck like Hammer, but the sheer presence of Blast Zone is the one thing that can really flip all of that in your favor, and then can also be nice, like in the Death Shadow heydays, it was one of the go-tos there, and just a pretty nice way to fold some extra interaction, which in your mono red deck that can only play half of the mana curve, might be tough to answer otherwise.
Oh gosh, someone's asking if Nathan's playing 80 cards or not. I'm going to just run a quick maths. All right, 17, 18, 26, 30, 37. It looks like 61.
You'd love to see that. You absolutely love to see that.
I'm going to check real quick because I actually... All right. I could be off by one, in which case... Nope, it's 60. I miscounted.
An unfortunate off by one error there for Jarvis U.
So 60 card elemental is getting it done.
Blast Zone gamely ticks up as the counter. Obosh, I want to say, I think is the most well-designed and most interesting of the companions. It's just a shame about the other 9, you know?
Yeah. And Dalton packing it up. A good run for